of fears. There's so much that we share that it's time we're aware it's a small world after all.
Hi, I'm Howard, and I want to thank you for coming to join me one more time in my podcast or blog to discuss some issues which are on my mind. And hopefully I will be able to get some critical thought engendered in yours. I love to share my experiences, and this particular podcast or blog article that I'm recording now relates to a storyline that I have which deals with the Flat Earth Society. This will be, I think, the second episode in that storyline, and this particular episode deals with the topic of it's a small world after all. And yes, I came up with this particular topic as I was sitting here thinking and humming, and I heard a tune which reminded me of the time several years ago when I was still trying to be a parent and had gone with my children to Disney World in Florida for our family vacation. And while we were there, one of the exhibits and rides or programs that we enjoyed was entitled It's a Small World After All. And so today, as I'm thinking about that and about the status of the world that is around me, I thought that perhaps we would think for a moment about how large is our world. And sometimes the world is a lot larger than we ourselves would have guessed. I was sitting here thinking about this topic and looking backwards. I remember the year that I graduated from high school, from a small high school in central Illinois, in the middle of a cornfield. And I was about to be headed off to Michigan State University. And I was the first member of my own family to have attended college at Michigan State. It was indeed a very, very different world. They allowed at that time for people like me who were enrolled in a college of social sciences or honors college program there at Michigan State to take electives even as a freshman. And as I was an out-of-state student, based on the tuition schedule they had at that time, I tried to take as many credit hours each term or semester as I could because that was cost effective for me. And I did not have a lot of money. My family had almost no money, and so one of the courses I took that freshman year at Michigan State University has had an impact on me, I believe, ever since. And it even colors some of my blog topics that I'm doing now. And a lot of the experiences that I have enjoyed or encountered during a life of almost 75 or 80 years that I've been here, I still try to learn something new every day. And I still try to understand something different every day. And the course that I took as an elective freshman year that I'm thinking about that impacted my life so much was a course in cultural anthropology. And I really wasn't even sure what that was, but the course description sounded interesting. A study of different cultures and different people and their customs. That type of thing. I have to confess, coming from the cornfields of central Illinois to Michigan State University, was to have a major and a big difference in environment from what I had experienced when growing up to the time that I graduated from high school. I had already gone through a very significant amount of cultural shock in my freshman year, before I took that cultural anthropology course. I lived in Fee Hall Dormitory, where I was housed as a freshman, and they provided 3 additional freshman students to be dorm suite mates. And it just so happens that in that year, 1967, Michigan State University had just begun a very significant effort to bring diverse groups of students into the MSU family and environment. To be honest, prior to 1967, almost all of the students of color at Michigan State University were, for example, black students in particular, on campus as athletes who had been recruited specifically for the purpose of making sure that Michigan State University was able to field a better football team or a better basketball team. But according to the luck of the draw, I drew 3 suite mates at that time that actually opened my eyes to a very different world from what I had experienced earlier in the cornfields of central Illinois. 2 of my suite mates were actually black students who had come down to campus as a part of a new program for diversity at Michigan State University. I believe it was called Project Detroit in 1967. Those were my longtime friends Stan Bush and Charlie Mays. There was also a 4th roommate who was happily a part of our Fee Hall dormitory group or club or suite mates, and that was Mike Pahanic. Now, as far as Project Detroit, that was a project which brought 300 or 400 additional black students to campus. That actually almost doubled the number of black students at Michigan State in one fell swoop. Suddenly, but in any case, these black students, black urban students from the east side of Detroit, mostly poor, just like my family, but maybe even poorer. But to be honest with you, I learned so much from them, and we became good friends, all 4 of us, and we did a lot of things together, and we learned a lot about each other and our cultures and our home lives. We visited down in Detroit, and that is the source of a number of very interesting stories, which I'll save for some other time. I had never previously encountered a group of students that I would characterize as urban Negroes or urban blacks. I guess I was just basically a small town country boy. And it was culture shock to me. My 4th suite mate, Pahanic, Mike, was from Cicero, Illinois. And I think the fact that the 4 of us got thrown together was culture shock for him too. At that time, Cicero, Illinois was not an area that had been very friendly or open to or even populated by black people. There had been a number of protests and difficult times relating to the integration of Cicero. In any case, I would characterize Pahanic, like I indicated, as basically a greaser or an Italian American without very much prior contact with black people of any kind. And it was truly a learning experience getting along with those 3 people. It was also kind of a pleasant experience. I started learning the world was a lot bigger than it had been for me in high school up to that time. I thought I had seen many things, but between my suite mates and the Michigan State University campus, and especially this group of black urban students coming in from the east side of Detroit as a part of this special project for diversity, I suddenly saw many new things and different things that I had to assimilate or adjust to. And this, even at that time, began to make me realize that there was a lot I could learn from other people who were not necessarily like me or what I had anticipated them to be. So with that background, I decided that maybe cultural anthropology would be an interesting course. And yes, it was. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. And like I suggested, it caused me to have a different perspective on so many of my life experiences since that time in 1967, up even until the present day. And in that cultural anthropology course, we were not studying about dinosaurs or anything like that. It was not that type of anthropology. It dealt with people and how they differed from spot to spot in the world, how they differed in terms of what they believed, in terms of how they did certain types of things. And so I found that fascinating, and I made sure that I attended as many of those courses as I could. Each time the course opened, I was there and I was enjoying my textbook. I put a lot of effort into that class, and it was sort of a natural follow-up to an interest I had developed in some coursework in my high school before I came to Michigan State. I had done an independent advanced placement or AP course during my senior year, and that dealt with linguistics and how people spoke and what their words meant and how they differed in describing their worlds. And so I took that cultural anthropology course, and like I said, I learned so many different things. And that, coupled with my looking back later, caused me to realize that it may be a small world, but it is a lot larger than many of us realize until we are trying to navigate through it. And the cultural anthropology course that I took, it impacted me to the point that since then, in almost all of my business dealings and all of my own teaching that I have done on my own, and also in my podcasting and in my blogging and in my attempts to understand what's going on around me, I had begun to look to see what factors or criteria would help me understand people and their cultures and what they did and thought. Those of you who have been following my blogs for the past 2 or 3 years, or my podcasts more recently, will recognize the fact that I have tended to characterize and to describe and try to explain things I see politically, culturally, historically, in terms of certain limited basic criteria. And I started out with race. So many things in my view can be explained or are colored by concepts related to race or ethnicity. I also saw that there were many important decisions made and behaviors observed and participated in related to religion. In the United States, I grew up in a small town with a background in a very basic Southern-oriented Christianity, a group called the Disciples of Christ, very conservative. In fact, it had been developed mostly in the South, and during the Civil War, many of the slave owners in the South had been members of the Church of Christ or the Disciples of Christ there at that time. So I started out with race, religion, and I also looked at sex, gender. So many cultural issues, so many political issues and historical issues deal with whether or not you are a man, a woman, something else if you think you can be. And so I've expanded those 3 criteria, race, religion, and sex, gender, over time to include another criteria, a criteria of money, or perhaps better stated, the influence of money and power on decision making and how people behave. And more recently, I have come to the conclusion that all those things together may actually be something that I am now beginning to call caste. Class, caste, or, upper class, middle class, working class, lower class, ghetto class, whatever. Some things that tabulate across race, religion, and sex, and gender. These are stratification issues. So within, for example, even race, you will see that some people who are of the same race or ethnicity see the world differently, in part perhaps because they have managed to become middle class or upper class. They've moved up historically from where they began, and sometimes that impacts on them greatly because they just don't really remember where they came from, or they're so happy to be away from that status that they force themselves to forget. And so with that approach, I can now see and appreciate the fact that my world has greatly expanded. I'm hoping as I'm talking to you, my friends, my followers on podcasts and blogs, I'm hoping that you have expanded your lives in the interim also, and that your worlds today are much larger than they were last year, or certainly a decade ago, or in my case, perhaps as far back as 40 or 50 years ago. So I am now an advocate for expanding horizons and looking over what is the flat edge of somebody's earth is basically to characterize it as moving beyond the flat earth society that limited my views and understanding of the world up until more recently as I matured and experienced new things in this small world. Yes, big differences among us, but there are also many similarities among us. And I had not traveled extensively outside of the United States up until pretty recently. I had had contact in the last couple of decades or more with different groups of individuals within certain racial or ethnic groups, within certain religious groups, even of different social stratus. At one point I had considered myself to be very middle class. I was a lawyer and a top-level administrator, and I learned to see the world from that perspective. But I have to confess, and I'm kind of proud and happy about the fact that I am one of those people who never forgot where I came from. And so I still, as a black progressive blogger and podcaster, I still am very sympathetic and supportive of black people, poor people, people who are like me, or at least like I used to be. I have always learned, well, not always, probably within the last 20 or 30 years, learned to value different groups. I learned to value Asians, and even today, you've heard the old saying, some of my best friends are. Well, some of my best friends are Asians, Vietnamese, Chinese, and a number of other groups, and I appreciate them, and I actually see them as friends, and I'm happy to believe that many of them see me as friends. I also learned to value Hispanics, although I know that within that ethnic classification of Hispanics, there is a great variety. Not all Hispanics are the same. There are Hispanics with Cuban backgrounds. There are Hispanics with Mexican backgrounds, with Venezuelan backgrounds. There are Hispanics, I guess, of a darker nature who are Haitian. But in any case, I learned that not all Hispanics are alike and see the world the same. Their world is smaller than I would have thought in some areas, but bigger than I realized when I was scrutinizing them for who they are and what they were and how they acted. So I've certainly learned to evaluate and value different types of people of all colors. But within the past 5 or 10 years, I have been blessed with some of the friends and people who I've had that I tried to mentor as a part of my outreach into my community, into my world over the years, and I had been successful to some point in helping a number of people of all races and cultures to achieve goals that they had set for themselves, to give them a chance to become a part of a larger world like I also wanted to be a part of. And so I have supported some of my friends. I've particularly pleased and proud of one of the people that I mentored, who is a Chinese national who has since been in the United States as an international student and eventually a green card holder, and for the past 5 or 10 years a U.S. citizen. And I invested a lot in him because that is what I saw was a way for me to appreciate and expand my world. And so now my Chinese American friend Ren Shear is very successful. He was able to get both a degree as a registered nurse and also an MBA, and he has been one of my friends who has been able and willing to be appreciative of the fact that I expanded my world so that he could expand his, a small world becoming bigger for both. And so he's successful, and I helped him with his school as an international student from China, and he stayed with me for a number of years until he got through his education, and he has shown his appreciation. Not that I ever asked any of the people I helped or any of my friends to do so. I wanted them to respect me and to appreciate it. I'm one of those people in a small world who says or understands that sometimes you don't get any reward for what you do, but you hope that what you do is sowing a seed that will allow somebody else that maybe you helped to pass it along to the next generation of other people who they can identify with as being a part of a larger world potentially. So in any case, suffice it to say, I have mentored, for example, Ren Yu for a number of years, and he is successful. And now I am old and trying to live on a Social Security benefit and a pension from the state of Michigan, where I worked for 30-some years. And I am very pleased and honored that he has rewarded me on several different occasions, even at my advanced age, with opportunities to continue to expand my horizons. And I have to confess that they have been greatly expanded even up until recently, in the past 5 years or so. My friend has pretty much sponsored and taken me along with him on 2 occasions to mainland China for a period of a month each time while he visited his family and some of his friends. I have not been able to afford international travel, even when I thought about it as something that might be interesting when I was younger. But I have learned a lot from my travels to Southeast Asia. Ren Yu has taken me on a trip to Thailand, and more recently he has taken me on a trip to Europe. And it's wonderful that I can continue to expand my world, to see that it is in fact a small world after all, but a lot larger than I had thought as a result of my international travel. Yeah, you know, travel is good, but I've gotten to the point now where when I've been offered opportunities for travel, particularly international travel, I've had to turn it down. I, as an older person, no longer get the enjoyment out of exploring areas by going up 1,000 steps into the air to see Buddhist temples in Southeast Asia, that type of thing. Something new perhaps, and I certainly, my last trip I believe was to Europe, where I had never been, and it was a great trip. It was a great learning experience, and I had accepted Renew's largesse to go along with him at that stage in my life. But now I look back, when I was married and raising kids, my ex-wife and the kids went to Europe for a month on an exchange program where she was a teacher, an education administrator, and was doing an internship in England. And they got a chance to see a part of Europe, but I had never been. And more recently, I did have that opportunity, thanks to my friend, and I got a chance to go to several places on the European continent. And indeed, I still remember those, and I have learned a lot. But in this last set of travel that I participated in, this small world after all, I found out that it is bigger than I had anticipated. I went to England, the United Kingdom, for a period of a couple of weeks. I went to Egypt, which I had always wanted to go to visit. And if you can see the video podcast, instead of only listening to the podcast at this time on an audio platform, you'll see that Egypt is a significant part of my background and interest area, my culture, even here in the United States. And that was a great adventure for me, to go to Egypt and to be in Giza and to see the pyramids and things that I had learned about and thought about, but never had thought I would and see and include in my small world. So that was great. And in that whirlwind trip, which I think the Europe-Egypt trip lasted about a month, I went to Italy and spent a week in Rome, and the Romans were not as friendly as some other places in Europe. I was in Egypt and saw guards at intersections waiting for terrorists or rebels to come and to attack tourists and other people. A very authoritarian type of setup in Egypt, and it was also a Muslim country, and that was a great experience for me. Again, expanding my world so that it was not as small a world as it might have otherwise been. So my studies and my travel have all helped me to understand that yes, it is a small world after all, and as long as you are alive, you can continue to expand your world by learning, observing, having an open mind. Today, in America, we see a situation, especially with the America First agenda, which is being advocated by some in government, and in particular the Donald Trump America First MAGA type of approach to the world. The opportunities for travel, internationally at least, are greatly reduced. It is not necessarily as safe for Americans to be out and about in the world today as it may have been during times earlier when I was out learning about the world and how large it was and how diverse it was. Hopefully we will move past this age of America First, and we will once again be able to assume and cultivate and enjoy other friends and other cultures. And there's nothing wrong with being ethnocentric and feeling that whatever you have is the best, but from a realistic standpoint, many people in the world do not regard what they see in the United States today as being the best world. I have seen people who are perfectly happy to hate Americans at this point. But just thinking back to the small world, a lot of times you are not the only one learning. When I was in China, for instance, I was the only black face that many of these Chinese people had ever seen. And I was not going necessarily only to the large cities, to the museums, and looking at artwork and stuff like that. I was going out to where the people lived, in the small villages where my friend's family lived, and seeing things, seeing people, farmers, small restaurants, people riding on motorcycles. But when I went there and being exposed to different religious types of situations that I had read about but had never really experienced, I would be the only black person many times as we walked along. And of course, I do not speak Mandarin, so it became even more important that I observe what was going on around me and hope that Renew, as my tour guide, would be able to explain and to keep me in the loop about what was going on. And we did have a great time. But as I walked around, particularly in some of the smaller areas and villages, I found that there were groups of people who followed me around because some of them had never actually ever seen anybody as black as I was. They figured out I was not a South Indian, but they couldn't really figure out what I was. And to learn that I was an American Negro, a black American, I was basically a small celebrity. And they would follow around, and they would come up to me to have pictures and selfies taken, and the adherence to honoring me and that type of thing, to shake my hands. It was a small world after all, and I was made to feel welcome for the most part while I was out and about in this small world learning. Well, I think that at this point I can indicate that in some of my travels I had fun. I had an opportunity to enjoy all kinds of food and experience all kinds of people, and basically to appreciate them. One thing I have observed for years is that, particularly growing up in the United States, we have a slightly different type of situation because America, the United States, ever since 1619, has had this legacy of the peculiar institution. The United States is and continues to be, and probably will be always, a country which is regarded as something to be controlled by white supremacists and white Anglo-Saxon men in particular. And that can be problematic. There were other places where we went, for example, France and England, where they also had participated in the transatlantic rites of passage to bring African Negro slaves to America, but they were able at some point in the past to repent and acknowledge that was not something that they were proud of, and they have actually apologized. Many of these countries are in fact much better places for black Americans to live than in their own country. And this is one reason we have seen a number of black intellectuals, celebrities over the years deciding that they were tired of the stress and situations they found here in the United States, and they moved to places and lived in Europe, and particularly Europe's areas that were favorable and receptive to them as people. And so when I went to France, and when I went to Rome, and when I went to the UK or England, I saw that there were a lot of different criteria for determining what a person was and their status and what impacted their lives, but in many instances those were not controlled to the extent that I see in the United States. In the United States, to be honest, from my perspective, from a cultural anthropological perspective, white Americans, particularly white conservative Americans, evangelical Christians, this type of thing, have often spent a lot of time trying to get individuals and groups of people who are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant people to consider other people of color to be their enemy. They spend a lot of time dividing people from each other. It's sort of like a divide and conquer strategy. And so I have found in this small world that I visited that even in a flat Earth society world, you can still reach out, and people can still be people, and people can still respect you and be your friend. And so that is something that I sincerely appreciate. People are not all good people, and people have hang-ups, but stereotypes of people are kind of interesting. When I was growing up during the time of the Vietnamese War or slightly before, there were a lot of people throughout the world who regarded Americans in particularly in a very negative way. In fact, there were even books written in which Americans were characterized as being the ugly American. Americans were considered to be arrogant, to think they were better than other people when in fact they were not. And they were seen to have habits, customs, perspectives that were suspect. But in any case, I think and hope that I had, during this time that we've had together, made my point that it is a small world after all, that we can continue to learn and appreciate other people, that there are places which, from some perspectives, are even friendlier and more advanced, both sociologically and in terms of their politics, than the United States. And my hope in the few years that I may have left is that Americans will once more look over the edge of the flat earth that they sometimes want to inhabit and see that right below the surface of the edge of the flat earth there are other people who could become their friends and who could teach them some things. So that excuse me, that is the message that I want to give today. It's a small world after all. We can learn a lot from each other. We need to understand that just because we are comfortable with something, we've grown used to something, doesn't mean that it is the only way, the best way, and that eventually, if we are ever going to get past the point where we are fighting and harming each other, battles, wars, whether they are trade wars, whether they are actually fighting hot military wars, at some point in time, is it possible that our world is so small that we can enjoy it together, and it's so large as that there are opportunities for us all to benefit from it? So I appreciate your taking time to visit with me, to listen to me talk about the fact that I can enjoy and hope you can enjoy what this world has to offer in our diversity. And when I see people who attack diversity, I smile, because basically if you attack diversity, you're living in a very small world, and I would suggest that you need to be careful not to get too close to the edge of it, because you may fall over it into the abyss and suddenly find out that your small world is not the world that you want to leave for your children or to enjoy for yourself. So, enjoy this small world and stay away from the edge.